The White House press room pulsed with tension. Cameras clicked in rapid bursts, microphones leaned forward, and reporters whispered under their breath, ready for the next soundbite. At the podium stood President Donald Trump, shoulders squared, confidence radiating like armor. Moments earlier, he had delivered a speech on unity, resilience, and rebuilding after recent national hardships. As the applause faded, a reporter from a major network raised his hand. His question cut through the calm like a blade. "Mr. President," he began, voice steady but sharp, "many people say your leadership divides more than it unites. How do you respond to claims that you care more about appearances than the struggles of ordinary Americans?" The room went still. Cameras waited, fingers hovering over shutters. Trump's jaw tightened. He didn't flinch, but the irritation was clear. Instead of engaging, he lifted a hand, dismissive. "I'm not going to answer that," he said firmly. The press exploded, questions flying, voices overlapping. The air crackled with anticipation, but Trump remained silent, his expression unreadable. Then something unexpected happened. From the side of the stage, the First Lady Melania Trump rose from her chair. The room froze as she moved toward the podium, graceful, her calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos. "Perhaps I can answer," she said softly, her accent carrying quiet authority. All eyes turned to her. Even Donald looked surprised. Melania placed one hand on the podium, her gaze steady. When she spoke again, her voice was calm, but beneath it was something rare in that room: vulnerability. "You ask if my husband cares for ordinary Americans," she began. "I have seen him, away from cameras and politics, sit with families who lost everything. I have watched him listen to veterans who felt forgotten. I have seen him carry the weight of decisions that no one else will ever fully understand." The room fell into silence. The tension that had once felt combative now felt reverent. "He may not always show it the way you expect," she continued, glancing at her husband, "but when the lights go out and the applause fades, he is not thinking about appearances. He is thinking about the people who trusted him. That burden can be heavier than anyone realizes." Trump shifted beside her, his expression softening. For once, he wasn't the fighter. Melania had become his voice. Then she said something that changed the tone entirely. "But maybe your question isn't really about him," she said. "Maybe it's about what we all choose to see on, what we fail to notice." The reporter crossed his arms, refusing to yield. "With all due respect, Mrs. Trump," he pressed, "words are easy. Can you give us something real and example?" Melania nodded slightly, as if expecting the challenge. "You want an example? I'll give you one." The room held its breath. Last winter, there was a boy 8 years old from a small town in Ohio. His father had lost his job. His mother was ill. They had no home. The boy wrote a letter, not to me, not even directly to my husband, but to the office of the president. In that letter, he wrote only one thing: "Please don't forget us." Not a sound could be heard. "My husband read that letter late at night," she continued, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "He didn't call the press. He didn't announce it. He called his team immediately. Within a week, that family had shelter, food, and support. Did you hear about it? No, because it wasn't done for headlines. It was done for humanity." Even the reporter lowered his pen. Cameras captured Trump's uneasy expression, part pride, part discomfort at the private moment laid bare. "You see," Melania said, "my husband isn't perfect. None of us are. But when people reduce him only to anger or division, they forget the private moments no one sees. True leadership isn't in the spotlight, it's in the quiet acts of compassion that never make the news." The room remained still. Then, from the second row, a new voice broke through. Emily Carter, a 26-year-old reporter from a small Midwest paper, stood, her notebook trembling slightly in her hands. Unlike the others, she wasn't there to attack. She was there to understand. Double quotes, "Mrs. Trump." She asked gently, "Why share that story today? Why now?" Melania's expression softened. "Because sometimes silence can say the wrong thing," she replied. "My husband didn't answer because he's been asked that question 100 times, always twisted into politics. But when the same accusations are repeated long enough, the truth becomes invisible. Today, I wanted to make it visible." Emily nodded, heart racing. "Do you think Americans need more of these unseen stories?" A faint smile touched Melania's lips. "Yes, Because when we stop seeing the humanity in our leaders or in each other, we lose more than politics. We lose compassion. After the conference ended, reporters rushed to file their stories. But Emily stayed behind, notebook still clutched in her hands. As Melania lingered, speaking quietly with aides, Emily gathered her courage and approached. "Mrs. Trump, thank you for what you said. I think people needed to hear it." Melania turned, her gaze warm but curious. "You are new," she said softly. "What is your name?" "Emily Carter." "Midwest Tribune." "Not a big network," Melania noted. "No," Emily said, smiling nervously, "but sometimes small voices carry big truths." Melania's eyes softened further. "And what truth do you hope to carry, Emily?" Emily hesitated, then answered with quiet conviction that leaders are human, that behind the speeches and the fights, there are real moments that matter. Melania nodded. "Thoughtful. Then you understand why I spoke today." Emily took a breath. "The boy from Ohio, what happened to him?" "His family is safe now," Melania replied, her voice gentle. "But his letter stayed with us. Sometimes it takes a child to remind us of our responsibility." Before leaving, Melania offered one final line. "Write what you saw today, Emily, not what people expect, because truth without compassion is not truth at all." Later that night, Emily sat alone in her hotel room, staring at her blinking cursor. Every major outlet would headline Trump's refusal to answer a question. But she had seen something no one else had. The quiet moment when silence gave way to sincerity, and so she began to type. Emily Carter stared at her screen long after midnight, the words blurring before her eyes. She had quoted Melania Trump's reflections on compassion and unseen. Acts of kindness, but her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Should she go further? Should she tell her own story, the childhood nights, when her family couldn't make rent? When her mother whispered, "We'll be okay. Just hold on." It felt unprofessional, but it also felt true, and hadn't Melania told her to write with compassion? So Emily did. She wrote about how the story of the boy from Ohio had stirred memories buried deep within her, not of politics, but of humanity. She described how his plea wasn't unique, how it echoed in countless American homes where families fought to be seen. By the time she finished, her article wasn't just news. It was a reflection on leadership, empathy, and the responsibility to look beyond headlines. When she hit send, she had no idea what would follow. The next morning, her story exploded across the country, not because it was political, but because it felt human. It spread through social media, was read aloud in classrooms, and discussed on morning shows. Melania Trump read it in silence. When she finished, she turned to her husband and whispered, This is why I spoke." That evening, Donald Trump sat in his private quarters, the article printed and resting in his hands. Melania sat across from him, calm and watchful. When he finished reading, he set the paper down without a word. The silence stretched finely. He muttered, "You shouldn't have said all that. The press twists everything. They'll use it against me." Melania's eyes didn't waver. Sometimes the truth is worth the risk. He frowned, leaning back. Donald Trump was a man who equated leadership with strength, and strength with never showing weakness. Yet his wife had pierced that armor publicly. "Do you know what people will say?" he asked. "Yes," she replied simply. "They'll say what they always say, but some will hear something different. Those are the ones who matter." He studied her, and something softened. He wasn't used to being defended, but today she had carried him, and somehow he respected it. "Donald," she said quietly, "leadership isn't just about being strong. It's about showing heart. Maybe people needed to see yours." He didn't answer, but deep down, something shifted. By morning, Emily's piece had become a national conversation. Headlines read, "First Lady breaks silence with emotional story." Others called it, "The human side of leadership, America forgot." Emily's inbox overflowed, editors praising her work, strangers thanking her, families sharing how her words gave them hope. Among the flood of messages, one email stood out. It was from Thomas, the father of the Ohio boy. "Thank you for telling the world what my family went through. We never wanted attention, just help. But today, we feel seen. God bless you." Emily's eyes filled with tears. Her story hadn't just reached readers, it had reached them days later. Melania received a handwritten letter from the same boy. "Thank you for not forgetting me." She held it quietly, her eyes glistening, and placed it on Donald's desk. He stared at it for a long time. Sometimes, she thought, it isn't policy or speeches that move people, it's the quiet truth of a child's words. Meanwhile, the reporter who had started the confrontation watched as Emily's story dominated the headlines. Bitterness twisted in his chest. He had asked the tough question, yet it was the young, unknown journalist who had captured the moment. Determined to reclaim attention, he wrote